coming down the line real shortly. So be patient. And when I know you keep hearing be patient, but I'll put it like this. A child, when it's conceived, you come together and it's an enjoyable time coming together to prepare for that conception of that child. When that child is actually conceived in the womb, it takes 9 months, approximately 9 months for that child to grow. Then there's a birthing that comes forth in that particular time frame. That birthing for the nurturer can be painful, determined on a couple different factors. Some has to do with how well that the body was nurtured in regards to nutrition. Some of it has to do with exercise. Some of it has to do with environmental things. So when we're dealing with the Aboriginal Republic of North America, there are things that we have grown through and changes that are coming or that have come about that are creating for a healthy growth. And so this healthy growth only came about through the first initial stages. So understand this, we are recently born. That's right. Okay? So a lot of us are looking at the Aboriginal Republic of North America, it's this indigenous society that has been around for X amount of time. But in all shapes, forms, and facets, we are really new. We are fresh from the womb. And so what the child needed while it was in the womb was one thing. But what the child needs now that is a full functioning, living being is something different. And so what we must do is be prepared to nurture the new baby. Does that make sense?
That makes sense.
And so, they say Rome wasn't built in a day. I'm going to say Egypt wasn't built in a day because Egypt predated Rome. Okay? Think about the inception of Egypt, or ancient Kemet as we know it to be. Who decided where to put the first stone to start the pyramid? And prior to the actual pyramid, the above structure, what was the foundation that had to be laid to support the structure of that pyramid? And pyramids are the largest constructions on the face of the earth. So imagine an architect that was able to take the time to build the foundation that created what we needed to facilitate the weight of the pyramid. Can you imagine what the weight of a pyramid is? Can you imagine that? Just imagine an elephant standing on your chest. And then times that by about 100 million, right? So when it comes to forming a government structure, the foundation has to be laid properly so that it can sustain that of what's being built. Does that make sense? So we're in the midst of finishing some of the foundation. You know what I'm saying? Because what happens is if it's not properly laid, it's going to create havoc long term. And we're not about creating craziness. We're about creating mainstays and structures that will exist for times and times to come. So how many of you are on the Tuesday night call? Okay? So Tuesday night call. The purpose of the Tuesday night call, because sometimes we don't take part in things and we don't understand purpose, or sometimes we don't know it's existing. One or the other. The purpose of it is for the government as it be to be able to come together throughout the nation and interface. Have conversations relative to things that you're having challenges with, things that you're having successes with, ways in which we can improve things. As a young government, we're looking for everyone's input. Now, don't take it in any negative fashion if the input that you give doesn't apply, because sometimes it depends. Sometimes you may give some input and we appreciate the input, but everything can't be used. So there are times you'll give input and it's not able to be used at that time. It could be backburnered. But your input is definitely appreciated, because we need to know where you are in your journey, in your process, and what we're doing is giving you functional ways in which to bring remedy about some of the things that you're growing through, or some of the things you're using to get to where you're going. So, on the call we talked about paperwork. We talked about the basic documents. There are 4 documents that we talked about that you're given when you are nationalizing. Those are to be taken to the notary and be notarized, taken to the pathonetary's office if you're in Sheckamexham or Pennsylvania. In other states, it may be called the Court of Clerks. There's different venues, but you're taking it basically to the county and having it authenticated with their county seal. We're not looking for them to validate us. What we're looking to do is serve them notice for us literally stating that this is what I'm claiming my nationality to be. Okay? Public Law 94 talks about you're to claim your nationality at age 18. Most of us never knew that the law ever existed, and even if it did, what's nationality? Most of us don't understand or understand what nationality is. So what we're doing is walking you through the process of becoming a man first, because manhood, the higher you are up on the totem pole, the higher level of ascension you came to your godship. So when you're at the top of the totem pole, you've achieved your godship, meaning that it's a human form. And you know, we're in, I know within the scriptures it says that ye are gods. Why would it say that? It says it because that's a level that man can achieve. Now, there's something called demigods, which are toward the middle of the totem pole. Those are individuals that were ascending toward the higher level but had not yet reached that level yet. And then you have man, which if you pass away prior to even getting into the demigodship, then you end up toward the bottom. That, from a societal standpoint, was showing us is just depicting that we have the ability to grow into ascend. So when you're interfacing in this jurisdiction that we work in, if you have not even claimed your nationality, you haven't even come into manhood. Taking responsibility for self means that you're responsible. It's your responsibility to know and understand the basics of law so that you're able to now, function and follow through with basic contractual agreements. So the purpose of this class and different things that we do is to help you better interface with the various jurisdictions that we work with and to have an understanding of how to function as a man first, growing into what we consider to be demigod and eventually into God. Does that make sense? Okay, so I am not doing class today.
Yes, you are. You're doing class right now.
I appreciate this break actually because of the fact that working toward formulating things to make sure that it's functional, so it's as it's presented to you, it's in a clear, clean, concise manner, and working with various jurisdictions, working with the different cabinet members, and we appreciate the cabinet members. Let's give it up for our cabinet members, by the way, real quick. Princess Ali, we definitely appreciate you being here. Chief Jawad, he's here every week, and we just appreciate them being here with us because it helps us working together, interfacing with one another, getting to know one another. There's a culture that comes about by getting to know one another, getting to, eventually from time to time sit down and break bread with one another, have conversations, speak beyond just the class. It's one thing to sit in class and, take what we call copious notes. I always share with everyone to make sure you're taking notes anytime information is being disseminated, because you never know when it's that aha moment that can take you to your next level. But in order to make sure that all this stuff is functioning properly, we're working together with various cabinet members to make those things occur. So on the call, we were talking about those 4 documents, having those things done. There are 3 levels that we work with those documents. First level is getting it notarized. The second level is getting authenticated. The third level is getting an apostille. Now, there is a misnomer out here that says that we need to take that apostille document and file it at the recorder of deeds. That is not correct. That is at the county level. Once it is apostille, that's at the state level. Which is higher, county or state?
State.
So why would I need to go to a county to file something that has already been apostilled in the state and is not just the state? Okay? They represent the government, as it were, when they apostille that document. So it's just like going to that like a Condoleezza Rice, the Secretary of State prior. Who's the present Secretary of State?
John Kerry.
John Kerry, okay. So it would be just like going to John Kerry's office and getting him to apostille that document when you go to the state and get that done. That's the highest level. There's no need to now go file it anywhere else because that's outside of what we have deemed as protocols. So everyone has a protocol manual. That protocol manual is used to guide you through steps. What I'm finding is that what we're doing is we're mixing philosophies. We're taking someone else's philosophy and applying it into what is happening in this jurisdiction, and that's not necessary. So we're going to ask everyone not to do that any longer, please. The reason why, moving forward, if it is found that this is something you've done after this coming Tuesday's call, and you're seeking for a lawmaster's assistance, they will not help you because you're not following protocols, and we can't help protect you when you're not willing to follow simple rules of engagement, simple contractual agreements. Because we tell you we need you to do A, B, C, and you decide to do A, B, C. Oh, I think I'm going to add Z to that. How can we protect you under Z when we've never even shared with you Z? Z is not something in the wheelhouse, so it makes no sense. So we're going, this coming Tuesday, we're going to have Brother Chet Ebb, I always say his name wrong, which is now the chief minister of our Juror Society, literally talk about legally, from a law perspective, why it is not necessary to deal with that type of thing. Okay? Now, I know no one here have been doing that, but working to make sure everyone's on the same. Bottom line. And it's no indictment on anyone if you've done something improper. That's, it's okay to make a mistake, but once the mistake is made and is brought to your attention, we ask that you just simply rectify it by following future instruction. Is that clear, everyone? Yes. Okay, good stuff. Appreciate you. We're going to, real quick, everybody, if we could stand so we can go over our preamble. And we're supposed to know this off the top of our head, but sometimes when you're nervous and you're speaking before people, you forget, so I'm not going to act like I can do it without looking. So, we the people of the Aboriginal Republic of North America, asserting our natural Aboriginal rights, as the oldest recorded Aboriginal Indigenous people of the Americas, consisting of an Aboriginal Union of Indigenous people, living in accord with natural law, the law of our ancestors, do hereby recognize all nationals of the Aboriginal Republic of North America as a unified community, establishing our divine right to self-rule, a common defense of our nation, a complete unified will, for progress and prosperity, by and for our people. establishing justice,
by
way of natural law and equality,
way of natural law and equality,
and complete autonomy as a nation. Ashe.
Give it up. Thank Minister Troy Smokes, serving in the National Cabinet and also as the head and Chief Minister of Sheikh Mexim. We've been working really hard since he came in to get things organized. For those of you who don't know me, I think everybody knows me in here. If you don't know me, I'm Dr. Ali Muhammad. I'm a former chief, now Minister of Education. And I'm in here so we can have our discussion for the week. Last week we talked about government, law, and economics. We got cut off on the live stream, so if the people were on last week on the live stream, I sent the people to Black and Nobel. So if you have anybody who wants to watch our videos, they have 2 sites that they can watch them online. Family members online, they can go to blackandnobel.com, and we're streaming every week. And they can also go to Aboriginal Global Media on YouTube, and we're streaming on that page too, so that they can watch us. I'm just sending some reminders to some people that our stream is giving us a little bit of technical difficulties. So give me one moment, because we got this said technology. They're starting to use it to update folks. Give me one moment. I just want to put this website. How many people were here last week? Everybody? Okay.
Real quick while he's doing that, anyone have one of these? Do me a favor, please, and put it on the vibrate or off position. Mine just rang, it wasn't. So I want to make sure. One of the housekeeping rules: anytime you come in to phone or vibrate or mute, that way it doesn't interrupt the flow of information that is coming across. Thank you.
You know what she talking about that muting on Tuesday?
Oh, yeah,
please.
just real quick. On Tuesday, when everyone's dialing in, please make sure you mute your line. What happens every single week is someone gets on, they're having a conversation while they're in the grocery store, their baby mama hollering at them, they holler at their children, and they won't mute the phone, and it interrupts the flow of the presentation. So definitely, if everyone could always mute your phone anytime you're doing anything with any type of class.
Thank you, Brother Smoke.
All right. I first want to thank Black and Nobel for allowing us to use the facility. They have been a hallmark in the community for over a decade, and they have been educating the community, presenting materials from various people in the community who have been offering grassroots education. So give it up for Black and Nobel for giving us the space. How many people had a chance to go out and see the Pope yesterday?
Oh, why you call it that? That's who was there.
Pope Francis. All right, so a part of our education deals with colonization and explaining colonization. So we went over some technical colonization last week with showing how we have been colonized economically and at law. And we showed some things about the infrastructure of said government, where it's important for the so-called citizens and the nationals to be aware of their rights, their responsibilities, and their power. The biggest and the greatest threat to changing the dynamics of what are happening today are teaching our people about civic operations as it applies to their economic capacity. Let me tell you why. When you think about government and how a government runs, it touches every aspect of your life. All right? It touches where you go to school at. It touches the religious or cultural entities that you go in to learn from. It touches on your understanding of or operation in contracts. It deals with your availability to get access to funds or lack thereof. It covers usually how you conceptually live your whole framework, how you choose a wife, how you choose a husband, how you do a number of things. So when we talk about government, we're talking about the essential unit on the planet for people to carry out their lifestyles. That's what we're really talking about. And so, anybody who lives in the United States of America, no matter whether they have declared some form of indigenous nationality or not, is affected by the origins of the United States of America and how it has moved to this present moment. You are affected by it. Affected so much, I can open your wallet and you'll find contracts in it to various institutions that are directly linked to the said government or private contracting parties to it. In fact, if you want to do business, you usually go to some entity to go get permission to do business, permission to get on the road, permission to do those things. So no one can talk down about the importance of talking about civics and government. It is essential to us changing our dynamic as a people. All right? You can say, I don't get into politics and religion, but you're a fool talking. Because politics and religion are governing the thinking and behavior of people around you, and you're doing business with those people, you're marrying those people, you have children who are those people who are affected by that environment. And so, we're not saying that you need to be in it to be dogmatic. You need to understand the dynamics of what's going on around you so you can make better decisions. So the reason why I decided to do a discussion on the Pope is because it covers the issue of heritage for us as a people, and so we get to look out of the window and see what our people are participating in, why they're participating in it, and what it means to us, and what it looks like for the future. Because if you can have thousands and thousands of people come see a person who they don't know personally, all right, who they only know based on what has been presented to them that the person is, and if they know nothing about what type of relation their ancestors had to that office or that position, then it says that they are in blissful levels of ignorance. Not only that, people who are behaving in that level of ignorance are also behaving in subsequent other areas of ignorance. And those subsequent other areas of ignorance are what is pulling your race down, pulling your people down, because that ignorance only exists as a result of the colonization. Besides that, it wouldn't exist. So, everybody knows who this guy is, right? That's the guy that was here yesterday. So how many people went to go see the Pope? Tell the truth. Alright. So, as you know, if you have tried to travel in parts of the city on yesterday or subsequent days, you see stuff was on lockdown, you couldn't go down certain streets. Today too, yeah. You had to have a Pope pass. I grabbed it. What did I do with it? Right there. You had to have a Pope pass to get certain parts, whatever. High security, crazy stuff. The city spent almost $12 to $13 million to pay for it all. They used the taxpayers' money, as we said last week, allegedly used the taxpayers' money. And they basically have the people's consent indirectly because the people showed up. All right, who is this person? Who is the Pope? And what does the Pope have to do with peoples of native or said African descent? Native peoples of Africa and America. What does he have to do with them? All right.
He's the one that, the Catholic Church is the one that named after us.
The Catholic Church. All right. Who knows the origins of the Catholic Church? Where does the Catholic Church come from, and when did they come from, where they came from?
Egypt.
Say it again?
Egypt.
Interesting. Okay. Where did the papacy in Rome come from?
Spin off of Judaism.
Was it?
Caesar.
Caesar.
The Roman Empire.
Who said that?
I did.
Roman Empire. Okay. What was the Roman Empire? What was it? Where did it come from? Okay, real quick. First of all, the Roman Empire did not originate in Rome. That's the first thing. All right. Even if you look today, and I'm going to go over some of this, there were several branches, but there are two main branches. You had the church in Byzantine that's called the Eastern Orthodox Church, and then you have the Catholics who are the Western Orthodox. Without breaking down sub-levels and other terms. All right, so you had those two. And then you had a church in Africa, all right, that covered Syria, Coptic, Egypt, the areas of Eritrea, Ethiopia. So those were the three main churches. And they, when you look at church history, there was conflicts between these churches. Like you can look at something called the Council of Chalcedon, where the African churches didn't agree with the Western and the Eastern churches, and allegedly had something to do with their views on Jesus, or who we're calling Jesus today. Because there was no word that was Jesus at the time, and they were using different words and had different concepts. In order to understand it, you have to be deeply entrenched into the study. Because if you Google it, you're not going to get the right answers. If you're not going to use source documents to understand the history of Christianity, you will be blind. So, I know that we're blind because we don't know who the person on your left is. How many people in this room know who that person on the left is? Can name them. All right? Right now, without looking at your device, and you can win $50 right now. On the left, who looks a little bit darker. Who is he? What's his name? Who is he? Where does he live and what is his name? Don't guess. Just if you know, you know. If you don't, you don't. If you've never seen him, you don't know.
I don't know.
It's all right. Here's the rule in our class: either you know absolutely, or you don't. And it's okay not to know. It's okay not to know.
Is that her in the first?
Nope. Nope.
You said you don't know.
Look, is he Catholic?
Nope.
Side?
That's a Jewish dude.
Yeah.
He looks a little Jewish.
He looks Jewish, but he's not.
He's not Jewish. He's Christian.
Look Russian.
Okay, we don't know. You say he's still.
Okay, so his name is Tawadros. Tawadros. He's also Tawa, Tawadros. Dros. He's also the Pope.
Presently?
Presently. The current Pope.
The real Pope.
I'm not going to say whether he's a real Pope, but he's the current Pope. And we don't know about that Pope. All right, he considers himself the Pope of the Coptic Church. All right? All right? Sometimes they blend it to being the Pope of Alexandria and all of Africa. So that's the Pope in Africa. This is the Pope to Rome and its descendant children. All right? So when the Pope comes here, I don't expect him to address all of the things that the popes have done. I don't expect him to apologize to our people for what Catholics may have done to our ancestors. I don't expect him to do that. I expect him to carry out church policy. All right? And church policy is deception on indigenous people. And deception on people in general now. But the deception on the whites is a little bit less because they have incentive to have a pope and to have that figure. Because as the vicar of Christ, he is supposed to represent the head of Christianity. Right. However, here's another Christian that's also called a pope. Now the reason why I'm highlighting this is because in history, even without going very deep, you find out that the Western Orthodox popes came way later than the popes that were coming out of Africa. Way later. So there were popes in Africa when Rome wasn't even a city. Which is interesting. Just for the sake of the clarity of history. Alright? Now, these guys are not our friends. Neither one. That's important to highlight. Alright? That wind is coming through. These guys are not our friends. And let me say this, because I know that children may be watching online on the links. I especially wanted children to watch this first part on the popes so they could see something that they've never seen. That not only that are there two people who consider themselves popes, there's another person that I could have put up. So there's multiple popes on the planet, but you get presented with one who looks a certain way, who comes from a certain place. Why? And the second question is, if you are indigenous and you are a practicer of Christianity of some sort, whether you're Catholic, Baptist, Pentecostal, whatever you may be even Coptic, calling yourself a Coptic. I figured it all out. Christianity came from Africa. You know, I'm a Christian. Without being religiously insensitive, which is considered a flagrant foul in America, right? Considered a flagrant foul to be religiously insensitive. Consider, if you consider yourself any of those, you are completely ignorant of your past. Complete. Anybody that's indigenous calling himself a Christian is completely ignorant of their past, to their detriment. And let me explain why I'm saying this. I'm not saying this to be religiously insensitive. You have the right to do what you want, just like I have a right to speak these words. And I don't want to offend you, but I do want to offer some education. If we're going to look at history, and history is best qualified to reward our research, and we can look at what has been successful for us, past, present, and possibly in the future, and what has been detrimental to us, what we're calling Christianity has been the most vile thing that could ever happen. And it's not Christianity itself, it's the people administering it. That's important. And what they have been able to do by getting agreement with those contracts. All right? Vile. When I say vile, I mean to your detriment. Now, it would not be very difficult for me to prove the point using the now. All right? We got people who will run laps around their church and slide down the aisle like Babe Ruth. Saying that it's some force over them called the Holy Ghost. All right? And that Holy Ghost is what's guiding them to behave like this. That Holy Ghost is also guiding our people to deposit over $11 billion annually to an institutions that are under umbrella, who won't even unite with the funds to do something effective to combat colonization or the after effects of colonization. They might not use that term. They might say the public schools are bad. Okay, some of you have collected a whole bunch of money. Let's go buy some of the schools that the city of Philadelphia is selling. They're selling over 30 schools. The buildings just sitting there. Let's go buy one. How much money did you collect this year? Okay, you collected, let's say you only collected $2 million. That's low for some churches, right? You collected $2 million. Put some of that money up so your children in the church who are on ADD, Ritalin and Prozac can get off the medication and be in a school that facilitates the principles of Jesus Christ, according to what we read directly. All right. How about that? It's not going to happen. The reason why it's not going to happen is because our people know that it's bull, right? The ones who administer, the reverends, they know it's bull, but they do it because it's a business. It's a business decision. It has nothing to do with the cultivation of human beings. If the thought of the cultivation of human beings was at the bedrock of what they did, they wouldn't have showed up to go see him.
That's correct.
They wouldn't have showed up. They would have protested. The office of the Pope of Western Orthodox Christianity for its behavior in respect to their own bloodline and the bloodlines of other people. So, as I go into the presentation, I need the children who are watching to understand that you're not born Christian. You're not born in sin. All right? And there's nobody coming to save you from your sins that you thought that you were born with through the concept of original sin, born in sin and shaped in it. All of that is to groom you into the perfect slave. All right? That's it. There's no other purpose for it. Because half of it you can't even identify as real in history. It's just as fake as the Tooth Fairy and Santa Claus, and your mother has that moment where she has to tell you the truth. You know, she got to tell you, like, I really bought the gifts. So, without disrespecting anyone, let me go into why the Pope is here. Why is the Pope coming to America now at this moment? Whether you agree with what I'm about to say or not, just consider it. If the people in Rome and the church, we can follow them in history and find out when they came to power. Let's use Columbus, 1492. They weren't in power yet, they were trying to come into power. Right? Yep. But your ancestors were in power. As a matter of fact, they had already ruled that part of the earth for over 700 years according to most documents. 700 years is a long time to rule. That's over 3 more times than the United States of America has been in existence from its inception, plus some. That's you ruling one area of focus, given focus, but you also ruled in areas outside of that. That was a highlighting area for them because of what they learned from that rule. So the Pope came to talk about unity of faith and respecting religion after 500 years of tyranny. When the last time people really had the opportunity to live under their faith, it was under your ancestors, where you created the environment, even though you didn't agree with it. You openly objected to what they believed in. You created a space where they could believe in it in peace. And nobody was getting killed, lynched, murdered, denationalized, or any of those things while we were interfacing with them in the place that we call Spain. They could read their religious books freely. They kept their status, their political status. They could freely interface with our universities. In fact, their world was enhanced by interfacing with us. When we colonized Europe, we brought civilization. When they colonized us, they brought destruction. 2 different things. So, they lived at a time where your people ruled, and they will never forget it. His archives at the Vatican have all of your ancient scripts and manuscripts and documents that can attest to what I'm saying. All right? So-called Africans ruled the planet. They ruled the planet in commerce, Africans and natives here. They ruled the planet in education. They ruled the planet in technology. They ruled the planet in military. They ruled the planet in the design of governmental structure. All right? So all the stuff that we do, setting up trusts and writing checks and all of that, we was already doing that then. All right? Making drafts and instruments. It was just operated differently. There was no usury. Different. So Pope Francis knows about your history. He knows about Columbus. He knows about the papal edicts. He knows about all the manifest destiny, all that came later from this psychology that Rome must rule the world, but not in justice. So it's 2 different things. I want the people who are watching to understand when you rule the world, you have a system of justice, and when they rule the world, they have a system of tyranny. Now, they're afraid whenever you get ready to come together because it's a threat to what they set up. So now, whether you agree with the call for the Million March this year or not, we always get some type of distraction from our unity. So with the potential of millions of people coming together here to at least discuss what's going on with them, one, and for the world to see it, two, is a political threat that we don't comprehend yet. Let me give you a further example. When the civil rights stuff was going on and the TV was invented in the 50s and people started getting international attention about what we were doing here, you know what happened? It caused people to stand up and revolt in their own countries. And so in Africa, you had all these political movements that were inspired by our political movements. So you had all these independence movements, and then Ghana is free from Great Britain. Kenya gets free. So-and-so frees itself from France. All right? Really only a few years later to tie back in contractually because they didn't make the right decisions because they didn't have a platform. And they took democracy. But at least there was an inspiration. So whenever you're inspiring people, the people who are the slave masters have a rule. The only thing that slave masters pay attention to are the slaves and the plantation. There's nothing else to watch. There's nothing else to watch if you're a slave master. So if you feel your plantation is getting out of order, the heads of the plantation get together and start talking about it, and they come up with some type of engineering or schematic to get things back in order before there's an insurrection, there's a rebellion, or if there's already one, how can we intelligently squash it? Our people need to understand that dynamic. To not understand that dynamic is to stay in fear and to do nothing about your situation. And that's what most people do. They take the option to do nothing out of the fear that they know there will be some repercussions if they stand up and do something. Say something. They don't want to be Martin Luther King, Malcolm X, or nobody else. All right. Nobody want to be that. All right, so the Pope is afraid of African tradition and native tradition and culture of any type. No matter whether it's Maya, Islam, Mayan, Olmec, native, whatever it may be, as soon as you start identifying with something outside of what Rome brought, boop, you're on the radar. So it's incumbent upon us to study. Who's that guy?
J. Edgar Hoover.
J. Edgar Hoover was the head of what?
FBI.
The Federal Bureau of Investigation. He's the longest standing director of the FBI in history. He was also the creator of something called COINTELPRO, Counterintelligence Program. And what was the counterintelligence program? The counterintelligence program was a state-sanctioned intelligence operation to politically investigate, dismantle, or assassinate indigenous leaders who were standing up politically against what had happened to them as a people with state-sanctioned action, Jim Crow, all the other things. So here he is with a what on? Did we call this a fez, but it's actually a tarbouche. All right. Tarbouche. Tarbouche. All right. So here he is. Now, where does a white man get this hat from? Because this is usually considered a Middle Eastern or North African headdress.
He was black.
All right. So, huh?
He was black passing for white.
Okay. There you go. So, those concepts, I won't sanction that, but I understand what we're saying when we come to that conclusion. All right. But the point is, he's taken from indigenous culture to present regalia, but he's a political officer. He's also a Mason. Scottish Rite. 33rd degree. So his hat has all the symbolism on it. When you look at this, it's the head of a Neb or a pharaoh with a sword going through a crescent and a star. All right, so you got Egyptian, Moorish symbolism on his hat, And then you have the words al-Masih. Does anybody know what that word means? Al-Masih. It's actually a word that you can follow etymologically all the way through what you're calling Arabic, which is not the name of the language, but we'll call it that for sake of understanding. Arabic all the way to Egyptian writings. The word al-Masih means what? The Messiah. Al-Masih means the Messiah. So, when you read the FBI COINTELPRO papers, specifically speaking about not to stop the rise of a black Messiah, a political figure that can invigorate the masses to unify under some nationalistic objective. Nationalistic is one who, it, possession of, nationality. So here he is with Masonic regalia, Egypto-Moorish symbolism, and Messianic terminology. Now the Pope represents the Messiah, allegedly. If you have questions, I'm going to come to y'all. Allegedly he represents the Messiah. Here's a question for black history, indigenous history. Where did they get all this stuff from? Where did they get these words from and these concepts from? Because if they originated, then there is theirs. But if they co-opted concepts and created concepts, the lie, from a truth, it had to be us, and we need to know what that is. Just for historical purposes. Because then, that will flush Pope Francis down the toilet real quick. Pope Fest will end. Now, this quote that I have here is from the Journals of Cristobal Colon, who have the misnomer Christopher Columbus. That wasn't his name. Christopher Columbus was not his name. But he says, whereas most Christian, high, excellent, powerful princes, king and queen of Spain, all right, who were the king of Spain at this time? Ferdinand, who were what? Catholics. Catholic kings under the Pope. Islands of the sea, our sovereigns. This present year, 1492, after your highness, having terminated the war with the who? Moors. Reigning in where? Europe. Okay, stop. He didn't say reigning in Spain. So, Europe at the time would have included what we call France, Spain, the Isles of Great Britain, Germany, all right, the Netherlands. Now, let's stop for a second. We know the word Moor is English, coming from moros, Roman, coming from Greek mores. But we also know the Greeks didn't invent no language. Neither did the Romans, neither did the English, so much so they had to use somebody else's alphabet, who they call Phoenicians. Punic, Punt, Canaan, a colony of Egypt, or better known as Tamer, or Tamer, the original name of the actual state, Tamer. So, when we see the word Moors, and we're dealing with etymology, I'm doing this for my folk who are linguists who only like to stop at Greek etymology. The Greeks didn't even have their own alphabet or language. But you're going to take a term, mores, which meant a person of hue, and allocate that they came up with the word. The word existed prior to them. That's important. But I'm also saying that to say that there were no pale Moors ruling in Europe. And the Moors were not Christians. They had various indigenous systems that can only be styled as today as African in some sort. So now, not only the Africans ruling in Africa, they're ruling in Europe. By the confession of Cristobal Colon, and now there's this expedition to do what? All right, so what do they want to do? They're talking about the ceding of Granada, a city, to the Catholics by the Moorish king. All right? All right, in the present month, in consequence of the information we have given your Highness, respecting the countries of what? India, of a prince called the Great Khan. Stop. So I don't want to mess up geography. India that you're talking about today had no rulers called Khan in the way that we know. The Khans were Mayan rulers. Olmec Mayan rulers. So he's talking about America. Which in our language signifies King of Kings, how many times he and his predecessors had sent to Rome soliciting instructors. So they're saying the Americans had came to Rome. That's important for history. We don't learn oceanic travel before Columbus, a lot of it, to say that it was travel back and forth, even though we know it was happening. Who might teach him our holy faith, the Holy Father, and had never granted him any request, whereby great numbers of people were lost, believing in what?
Idolatry.
Idolatry and doctrines of perdition. Stop. Anything that wasn't Christianity was pagan. So when you read history, you get paganism. And paganism became the reason for the Catholic Church to call it worshiping the devil, anything that wasn't Christianity. And anything that was pagan was indigenous to your people. And so now the thought and the program was Christianity must become the bedrock of the society. But it wasn't really never about Christianity becoming the bedrock of society. It was just about white men ruling, period. So now here they are telling you you rule where they live. I just wanted to highlight that. That's important for history. Because whatever you were doing at the time, whatever remnants of it exist now, it's an enemy to the Catholic Church. For the record, just so that we don't get confused, well, Brother Ali, you talking about the Moors and you talking about Arabs. The Moors were Arabs. Emphatically no. I'll just use their records. These are records from a book called The History of Empires, and it's talking about a captain from Great Britain who came into West Africa. And this is what he said he saw. All right? He's talking about the Caliph, I believe this one was Muley Muhammad ibn Abdullah. He said his distemper towards the latter end became so nauseous that no one could bear the room where he lay. Notwithstanding all the art of perfumes, he was ever consulting physicians before his death. For the Moors never believed any distemper, which is disease, incurable, and have more faith in physic or healing than any people in the world. And no one dared to undeceive them. He goes on and talking about them. So now they're talking about the same ruler putting his son on the throne. Or after, actually he didn't put his son on the throne, but what happened after? Bashar Emphael, a chief what?
Negro.
With the Negroes of the court and guards, what did they do? They seated. The F's here are the mispronunciation of S's, which is a sign of the use of Latin. You know, when you get the F and the S seated there. But who seated Muley Hamed upon the throne?
The Negroes of the court.
What are the Negroes doing seating people on thrones? All right. Of his father. So his father didn't even choose him. Adored him and declared him king. The city of Minkanez, which was in what is called Marrakesh, which we misnamed call Morocco, is immediately commanded by the palace, where all the cannon are kept, and for fear of being plundered by the blacks, was obliged readily to submit. So basically, they're telling you that these people are blacks, Negroes, and Moors are all the same thing conceptually in history. Now, I know people would disagree with that today based on their Moorish science teaching. I'm not trying to submit to a doctrine. recording history so we can identify phenotypically who is who. These are Africans, for lack of a better word. All right? We know that's a misnomer, but we're going to use that. So, Moors are Africans, period. Moors were not Arabs. That is a 20th century invention created to slight Africans of a part of their long-standing legacy on the planet. And the reason that that was strategically done is so that you would never highlight how you came from under Roman oppression in the past, because you already did it one time before. And you use systems to do that, not guesswork. And if you're going to get from under Roman oppression today, those same laws apply. It's just that the conversation is not being had in the places, because those places don't have those kind of conversations. The church is not going to have it. Even the mosque is not going to have it, or the masjid, because they've been co-opted by the Pope. How do you know that they have all been co-opted by the Pope? Truth one, I'll use Moorish history to declare it. Jesus Christ, or Jesus. Despite your belief system in African Islam, the original indigenous Islam, there was no Jesus. And we were the ones making the paper and making the books. There was no writing books. By the time we got to writing books, they got to writing books, let me get to it. By the time they got to writing books, there we go. By the time they got to writing books, they started this madness. They developed the printing press in the 1400s. All right? We have been writing on paper for over 5,000 years before this. Various types of paper. Whether it was papyri, which only grows in Africa. All right? Or using animal skins, which we were the wealthy people that had all of the animal husbandry. All right? And in order to make a book like the Bible, you had to have at least 400 to 500 animals so you could skin them, dry out the skin, and then have the ink to write on the vellum. So poor Europeans couldn't even afford to make books, nor did they have the technology. So let's ask the question. What do they mean by Greek and Roman libraries? I'm gonna slow you down for a second. All right. Every Greek text ever discovered was never discovered in Greece. If you can prove me wrong, I got $100 for each proof you bring. The documents called the Amsiraincus documents were papyri found in Egypt, and they allocated that it was Greek writings, when the word Greek does not appear in the writings. So, there's a book you need to get. If you're on Scribe, you can get this book, 3 volumes. It's called Black Athena, The Afro-Asiatic Roots of Classical Greece, the Falsification of Greek History. Say it again. You got it here?
No, we're in order.
Black and Nobel, come and get their order, Black Athena, volumes 1 through 3. All right? The Afro-Asiatic Origins of Classical Greek History, the Falsification of Greek History. Written by a white man. Why was the book written? To prove that there was no classical Greek history. It's all stolen Phoenician and Egyptian artifacts. And that the creation of the thought that Greeks created a classical history was an invention of the 17 and 1800s. Prior to that time, everybody knew that the people that you call Hellenes got all of their culture from Phoenicians and Egyptians. Everybody knew that. That was a given fact. In fact, white people got so mad at the history, the person that they call the father of history, Herodotus, in the 17 to 1800s, all of the classical scholars turned against Herodotus. And the reason why they turned against Herodotus is because he recorded that all of the learning of the Hellenes came from the people of Cush, Egypt, and Phoenicia. We didn't make it up. They said it. Copyright that. As a matter of fact, check it out. Herodotus couldn't even write that down while he was in said Greece. He had to come to Africa to get it written down on papyrus, which they found in the same finding called Oxyrhynchus, where Herodotus' writings were found in Africa, not Greece. So he came, like he said, as a student to study, and he learned the art of recording things, and they allowed him to record the fact that they told him and laid out to him the documents that proved that we taught everything y'all got, we taught y'all. So, as we start peeling back white history, and we get to 1611, we find out that the first time the word Jesus ever appeared is in this book. That's allegedly 1,611 years from the time that he lived. It took somebody 1,600 years to find your name. The name that you're being called now for the last 400 plus years, that this guy who came to Philadelphia says he represents you for 2,000 years. So he got 1,600 years of missing history that he's saying that he's been the representative of Christ through one of his apostles, Peter or Mark or whoever. That's what you call a fairy tale. It's a fairy tale. King James knew it was a fairy tale because he decided to translate what was then the Latin Vulgate, allegedly, and come up with his translation and subsequent other translations. So allegedly they translated this book, but this is the first time the word Jesus showed up. Now, when the word Jesus first showed up, you were in Africa or America and you didn't know nothing about Jesus. So now you are worshiping indirectly but directly King James and his scholars.
Yes.
There's no other way to put that. You're worshiping his scholars. Now some people say King James was an Israelite. All right. Check this out. We have the lineages laid out from King James. Hell, they got photos. And they got people who are alive today who still say that they're a lineage of King James. Well, let's posit, because I ain't going to be mad at the Hebrews. I'm not starting no fights with y'all because y'all like to argue. But let's just take this into consideration. If King James was the king, all right, of England and Scotland in 1611, at a time where at least the Spanish and the Portuguese were coming into Africa. And according to Israelites, Israelites were being stole out of Africa and brought to America. How come King James didn't stop it? What record do we have of King James fighting slavery? Since he was around during the time that parts of it had commenced. All right. He's 120 years past 1492. So he had to see what was going on. All right. So that's a bunch of BS. We don't have to go through that a lot to prove our point. Let's go back. Now, check this out. Jesus, I got to deal with this. Because y'all gonna get us in trouble if we don't deal with this. The Pope says he represents Jesus. Now, the Pope is gone. Hey, he can come, he can visit whatever he want to visit. The Pope is fake. Fake in the minute. He don't represent no Jesus, he don't represent nobody. The Pope represents the imperialism of white males on the planet. Period. That's it. Now, he also said he represents Jesus. Alright? Now, what the next few minutes I want you to see is the colonization. Now, we come in here and talk about nationality all the time. Troy just talked about documents and correcting things, and that's a part of our political process. But if you still have the same mind, how are you going to nationalize and become a functional indigenous person who is re-embracing their indigenous culture and doing something for your people, and you still believe in this or some aspect of it? To the extent that you have no proof that it's real, but you still believe in it. To the extent that if I say something contradictory to your belief, I automatically become your enemy because I'm challenging you or questioning your God. Check this out. I want to show you, real brief, where they stole this stuff from. How many people want to get some of the screenshot this? Where they stole this stuff from. Okay, so, Jesus. First of all, I always like to use what Bilal says. When you go to the books about Jesus, now we learned this in law. You put somebody's name in capital letters, you're trying to make him into a fiction. Capital letters equals taking the name out of grammatical syntax. First letter is capital because it's a definite noun. All right, your first letter. And then the other letters are lowercase. When you put it in all caps, it's a sign of you trying to change the syntax of the grammar for some reason. All right? And a part of that is making it a fictional character. So, when you go to the Bible and you look at the word Jesus, the word all the other stuff is in upper and lower case. You get to Jesus, it's in all caps. I guess they denationalized Jesus. Jesus needs a nationality. But they say that there were things that were coming that were a sign of Jesus. All right, so this is Matthew 2:2, saying, "Where is he that is born King of the Jews? For we have seen his star in the east and are come to worship him." So a star was supposed to be the sign of his birth. Now, there's Jesus, or Zeus, or Jesus. Look, let's start off with the people who still believe he's white. Let's just start with you. We can go levels to all the way he don't exist, but let's start with the people who still believe it don't matter. But they still got this in their house. Now, if a star, which is a sun, is the sign of his birth, and he's white, that means Jesus has cancer.
Or a leper.
Because white folks ain't trying to get not too close to no stars or star force. We have something called melanoma that will develop in their tissues as a result of trying to absorb solar or star rays. So don't tell me Jesus is no star, nothing associated with this Jesus and stars. Alright? Because if so, then Jesus is a zombie. He pulling off some tricks or something. And I put my guys here to give you an idea, because this is Sammy Sosa using phytic acid treatments on his skin to destroy his melanin, right? And this is white blood cells eating up melanin as a result of super poor nutrition and weak chromatin being passed down through the seed and the egg. And we used to call this leprosy. So how does the Old Testament say the people were cursed with leprosy, which means the loss of the color of the skin? Then you following a white Jesus who got leprosy, and he's healing people. Just think about how crazy they made us. Now that's white supremacy on
fleek.
On fleek. That's white supremacy on Viagra. You get people to read one part of the book that says that it's a curse, but then you present the person as the thing that's the curse for them to worship. That's a hell of a psychological game you playing. So Jesus got leprosy. No. And Jesus ain't sunbathing.
And he
So,
got perm.
anybody with the white Jesus, a star can't be a sign of his birth because the star is the sun, and Jesus, the white and the star don't go together. Just for the record. All right, check this out. This is from the book Black Athena Volume 1. I want you to pay attention to this. Stars are often associated with great and messianic leaders. He's talking about in tradition. From Cyrus, who founded the Persian Empire, so the Persians adopted it in the 6th century BC, to the Chinese rebel leader of the 8th century AD, associating himself with stars. All right? It is particularly, so now the Persians were using this association with stars and great leaders 600 years before Jesus. So did the Christians borrow something from the Zoroastrians or the Persians?
Yeah.
I don't know. Let's see.
Soul.
It is particularly striking to note how often stars appear in association with major leaders during the period of crisis. This is in Jerusalem from 50 BC to 150 AD. From the comet seen as representing the spirit of Julius Caesar. Julius Caesar, they saw a comet and they thought it was a star, so they associated with the greatness of Caesar. To the star of Bethlehem that is associated with Hadrian's new god, Antinos, while the last messianic leader of Jewish resistance, this is in history, was known at least by his enemies as Bar Kokhba, son of a star. Now, I'm highlighting this only for this word. This word is written in Hebrew here, right? But where does it come from? This is a table from the book Star Prophecy. And I go to this tablet called Mul Apin, which is a cuneiform tablet. All right. Etymology. To show you who is who. The word for star here, where they're talking about this planet, see it here? What is that? Nibiru. You heard of Nibiru? Supposed to be the star or something? What do they call it? Wormwood? Whatever. They got this from a text written by black people. So now, the Persians is 6th century BC. We're going back all the way to about 2000 BC to discuss the origin of the etymology of the word star, which is Kakuba. Kakuba and Kakob in Hebrew are the same etymology or etymological root. I'm showing you this because now you're dealing with the word for something and where it comes from. So if somebody's borrowing your words, they can't borrow your words unless you're talking to them or writing to them. So now we have transference of information. And I'm highlighting this because if the word for star was in existence 2,000 years before it was written or associated with any Jewish person, and they got it from black people, how did they get it? It's just a question. That's the source on the left, so that's the book that you can get it from. Next, from the Egypt. This is from the pyramid text, spelled 882 through 884. That's the source. So if you look at the pyramid text and you go to 882, you're going to see this quote. It says, "O king, you are this great star, the companion of Orion." This star is Sirius, who traverses the sky with Orion, who navigates the netherworld with Osiris. The great mooring post cries out to you as to Osiris in his suffering. So this is in Abydos, our people associating great leaders with stars. The pyramid texts are thousands of years before any Bible. So now you have indigenous people associating great people with stars, then all of a sudden you have a Bible associating somebody with a star. It's showing you where they got the tradition from. Now, why did our people associate ourselves with stars? That's a heavy question. The simple answer is Melanin. That's the simple answer. Melanin is the biochemical correspondent molecule of a solar orb for biological life forms on the planet. In order for those life forms to exist perpetually, they must have melanin, or if they come into existence without it, they're going to go out quick. And this is what you see happening with white people. They're like a bleep in time. You think about millions, trillions of years, they're like, oh, 6,000 years in and out. So they're dying off right now. Because they don't have the star stuff. And all carbon is stardust. That has what is called in physics the ability to attenuate the force from a star, which means it's a resonant frequency. It can resonate with the frequency of the star, and then the star becomes a fuel for its existence. That's it. So now you have a scientific underpinning to a culture. So now if you're going to associate great people with stars, right, they need to have the biology that matches the star. But if you take out the science and then start associating it with stars, you can make up a myth that has no real basis in nature. And that's the difference between indigenous myth and these other myths. Indigenous myth always had a basis in nature to tell you something about nature and yourself. These myths are about losing teeth and losing stuff, or getting stuff from fake people. They have no basis in nature. Reindeer flying means nothing. There's no encryption. A fat man that you sit on his lap sounds like pedophilia.
Yeah.
Tooth fairies getting your teeth, sounds like somebody stealing property or something. Yeah, organ harvesting. What you gonna do with my teeth? So this is where the stuff is coming from. Abydos. All right, Sumer. Let's go deeper. A picture is worth 1,000 words. This is a star at the pineal gland of King Tut on the panels of his tomb, with the serpent that wasn't evil, the Uraeus, all right, which represented energy, solar energy, star energy. All right. So now we don't have to guess about this. White folks stole black folks or indigenous folk history. Period. The Pope is a thief. The Pope is a thief. All right, let me prove it for you. Say I'm insulting this old man. Why are you insulting that old man? He came and he said he stood for. All right. Check it out. The earliest record of this title, Pope, was regarding Pope Heraclius of Alexandria. Where's Alexandria? Egypt. It's not in It's not in Antioch. It's not in Rome. It's in Egypt. In a letter written by his successor, Pope Dionysius of Alexandria, to Philemon, a Roman prepster. This is the Greek. All right. Now this is what they call in Greek. This is actually Phoenician. All right. When this is translated, I received this rule and ordinance from our blessed father, Pope Heraclius. But Heraclius was in Africa. So my point is, the papal term started with African people. Athenius, who was considered a heretic by Constantine. But it was because he was born of pagan parents. He was an Egyptian. So he was in this other papacy. But other people weren't even calling themselves popes, emperors or whatever. And Rome wasn't even in existence. So the Pope stole his term from Africa. He's a thief. He's a thief. Why is he a thief? Okay, he stole it. And he got it now. These are the three churches. This is the one you never learn about. got Byzantium, which sometimes you learn about if you go into Russian and Eastern European Christianity. Everybody knows this one because this is where all the other was in the Protestants and everybody came from. What about this one? What about this one? That's a problem for, let me break this down. Coptic Christianity must always be kept a secret because once you dive into it, you find out first it's not Christianity. That's the first thing you find out. Then you find out where the story of Jesus actually came from because it's still on the walls. I'm about to show you. So now, Immaculate Conception, all right? The word Mary, all of that is stolen property. We need to go do a trademark office and stop them from using these names. I mean, put that into our trademark office and stop them from using these names. Check this out. Right. So check this out. Now the word Messiah comes from the term mus. Sometimes they say mess. Mess means two things. It means to initiate someone, or it means a child. And it was used interchangeably because when you came into the initiation, you were considered a child, a neophyte. And you're about to go through a rites of passage. But to be a mus, all right, means to get initiated. All right, so you have leaders who they were called, they switched their names up in the terminology. You have a leader called Amos the first. Amos. Now, Amos wasn't his name. Amos is a transliteration, an attempt to transliterate two Egyptian terms, Mus and or Yah. And what they did is they flipped it around. Instead of saying Musiah, which would be the phonetic of Messiah, all right, they flipped it to Amos. They put the suffix on the front. So Mos is actually Mus. All right, I'm going to show you some of these terms. But this is one of the kings. This is Amenhotep III. And he is the first child depicted as being the offspring of a miraculous birth between a god and a woman. But the guy was a man with a body, not a spirit jumping down in virgins. So get this book, The Miraculous Birth of King Amenhotep III and Other Egyptian Studies by Colin Campbell. Because this is what the first messiahs look like. Mushik, Masih. All right? All of these Afro-Asiatic terminologies come from the Kemetic. All right? Everybody got the book? The Miraculous Birth of King Amenhotep III and Other Egyptian Studies. I'm pretty sure the Vatican has these folios in their library. How come black Christians can't learn about this, man? See, genocide is real. When you start breaking down genocide, you can actually pinpoint the genocide. You're going to church, you're sitting there, looking at this leprous figure, and you're saying, he's the Messiah. Right? He's the Messiah, he's the Messiah. And you don't even know where the word comes from, the concept, the image, nothing. It's all a corrupted form of the original indigenous culture. And now, what is it causing you to do? It's causing you to be sick. Why? Because the definition of sickness is an unequal exchange of energy in the universe, which creates a breach. You take in a cheesesteak hoagie, right? Your cells are oscillating at a certain voltage. The cheesesteak is oscillating at no voltage. You put it into your cells. Now your cells are trying to use it as energy, but they find out, oh, it's junk. So they have to use their own energy to get it out. So now if the cell was operating at 7,000 volts, it's operating at 3,500 volts now. You just cut it in half by putting something in it that was not an equal energy exchange that you call in nutrition. So now the cell is operating at half its capacity. Let's say the cell was carrying out 100,000 functions. It can now only carry out 50,000 functions. Which means that now the other functions they was dependent on to keep the cycles going are going to begin to break it down more, so it's going to break down to 25,000 functions. Now the cell is operating at 1/4 of its capacity because it put something in itself that it thought was going to give it an equal exchange of energy, but it didn't. It robbed it of its energy. So now the cell is starting to go through necrosis. It's starting to die, and it's either going to turn into cancer, which is white, or a pale cell that's losing its melanin, or it's going to go through cellular apoptosis. Do y'all know who Apop was, or Apep? Apep was the serpent in Egyptian literature that was the evil serpent. They had the Uraeus figures as the energetic part, then they had Apep. So these biologists had the nerve to name the death of a cell after an Egyptian figure that created death. Think about that for a minute. Just think about it. Whoever made that word knows where it came from. They know the etymology. Meanwhile, we eating the cheesesteak. On 25% of cell operations. So now the church has become an entity that's robbing the people of their energy. And they're dying. So much so that young people don't want to go in there because they're like, oh, I already peeped game. I watched grandma, I watched mom. She got breast cancer, she got all kinds of cancers, she got everything going on. I ain't going in there. That's what people go and die at, church. They go in and die. And they got all the signs for you. We about to crucify your ass. Jump on this cross. Can't get down. And these Romans sticking you with all kinds of stuff. Then they had the nerve to say, okay, we really going to get him. We're going to want him to be sacrificed. Put God on that joint. Put God on the cross. All right. So, this God is not on the cross. He's chilling. Look, who made this? This wasn't made by no Renaissance people. This was made thousands of years ago. Somebody had to know the chemistry of how to put these things together, these metals and these salts, in order to create the sculpture. They had to know the heat that was necessary for the ingredients in the biochemistry of what they're making in order for it to get solidified. They had to mimic the shape or the appearance of the person, so they had to have artistic quality, which means they had time to do it. They had to know how to carve these writings into these clay objects. They had to know where to get the clay from it, that they could use it as clay to make the object. How long do you have to live to learn all those things? All right? So we got pottery, art, sculpture, chemistry, biochemistry, metallurgy. And you want to go to church? You better go study some metallurgy. You better go take a class on biochemistry. So the real Messiah studied science and the fake Messiah studied religion. Look, then they flipped it on you. They turned themselves into classic men. We Renaissance men. We against the church. Now, what were they? They studied Hermeticism. Stop playing. Hermes? Yeah. Hermus? Heru? The moose? The initiate? Heru? The Messiah? Oh, stop playing. Oh, we know what y'all did. Okay, so now y'all against the church. And now, watch how society has come now. So now, you had this divide between the church and the scientists. The scientists were Renaissance men. The church were old school. The earth is flat. Crazy folk. So they warred with each other a little bit. Then they got together like, okay, listen, this is what we got to do. We all got to coexist. So let's stop tripping. All right? Because you know what you got is from them and what we got is from them. So let's just make the laws so that religion is respected. All right? And then we're going to take the history and flip it and say everything came from Greece. Cool? Cool. We got a deal. So now when you hear Gnostic and Hermeticism, you don't know it's code words for African or indigenous or our folk. They use a whole bunch of code words to transfer what they're transferring. So check it out. These are writings of the panels of the Temple of Luxor. I got the real things, just in case people think I'm just dealing with the copies. I got the real thing. The actual wall panels. All right? I got the real thing. These are the depictions. You can see there. This is a real place. It's called the Temple of Luxor. Now let's go back. This is where the story of the Immaculate Conception comes from. This is Mariam Hatshepsut, also known as Mutumwia. Mariam is a term for both women and men who were the Neb, or misnamed the Pharaoh. The word Mariam, or Mary, comes from Ta Mary, which is the word for Egypt, because there was no Egypt. There was Ta Mary, or sometimes called Kemet. So the word Mary comes from Kemet. Think about this now. Kemet is birthing messiahs. Ta Mary is birthing. Here they are, the rowers. So here you have her. All right, she's going and talking to different people. All right, she's going through all kinds of initiations. All right, this is the Ankh. They're putting the Ankh at her nose. This is what you call in the Ruh al-Qudus, the Holy Spirit that impregnated her. It wasn't no spirit. This is her. Look at who she's talking to. First, she's talking to Jehuti. So she's learning the traditions. Then she comes over here and she's dealing with Nun, who is the former and fashioner of life. All right. Then she's right here talking to Heru, which is the symbol of the lineage of women who are initiated. And so she's here with the midwives sitting on a birthing stool. She's not up with her legs up in the Greek freak position, getting the epidural. All right. So now the child is born, and everybody's praising the child. Amenhotep III. Okay, so these are all panels. Look, this is her communing with God. All right, and the legs being crossed is a sign of sex, of coition. All right, but it wasn't a fake God. It was a leader. So now, indigenous history confirms that the Immaculate Conception from a Mary to birth a Mus or a Messiah comes right off of the walls where your people come from. Meanwhile, there's folks studying the King James Version declaring it to be the Word of God. That, exactly. That is Colonization 101. So now, if we're talking about forming your nationality, see, it's a whole process of breaking. All right? You got to break this stuff up. You got to break it up. And all you're going to find is you're going to go right back to your mothers and fathers. So ain't nothing wrong with the Bible. The Bible said, honor your mothers and your fathers and your mothers so that your days may be long. King James is not your father. Not your father. Neither is Jesus. Jesus is 1611. I'm just saying. Why is that so hard for our people to get? You know why it's hard for our people to get? Because they love the devil because the devil gives them nothing. They love these white folks out of fear. It's fear. That's what it is. It's fear. Because no matter how much I break this down to somebody who thinks that they're Christian, they have a right to stay Christian. And I'm not trying to convert you. I'm just saying you dealing with stolen property, right? And if you're in a car with somebody and the police catch you with somebody who has stolen property, they say you are what? Accessory, an accomplice to the crime. So now indigenous people have been accomplices or accessories to the crime of birthright theft. It just so happens that they have worked with others to steal their own birthright. So now when you go home, our folk don't notice. They can watch their online stream, or if they want to, they can get the books. So there has to be a mass re-education of our people. Not only does there have to be a mass re-education of our people in that respect, check it out, as I close out this point. I don't want to overbear this point. Here you go. Mother and son. Here you go. All right. Let's see. I want to get to something that I had in here. Oh, let me go back. So check it out. Let's go back here. The African Orthodox Church in Eritrea, Ethiopia, Sudan, they were all around these buildings. This is like going down the street. Oh, they go churches right there. They go to the Temple of Luxor. So now they're trying to present to us as if Africans were Christians when they had the original stories on their walls that they could read. So the splits between, there was no split between the churches because there was no African church. That it did eventually get co-opted, and now you got, over allegedly over the last number that I got, I don't know if this is accurate. In certain parts of East Africa, there's over 45 million Christians. Because Ethiopia is considered a Christian country, and Eritrea is considered a Christian country. So you have this war now. Like, check it out. You have this war between religions. There is no war. It's fake. Now let's get the chronology right, just for the sake of understanding this. Wait, what's the year? 2015 allegedly, right? Okay. How long has it been 2015? For 2015 years? No. There was no year zero. Alright, so I want you to hypothetically, without getting into a whole bunch of stuff, because we're going to close this down. Imagine the calendar that we're using right now, and just walk yourself backwards. It's 2015, let's go back. Year 2000, year 1000, year 500, year 300, 200, 100, all the way back to 0. Then let's keep going back. Because we got this thing called BC, right? So, 50 BC, 100 BC, 150 BC, 1000 BC. If the people on the earth were using this calendar, that would mean they had to count down to the birth of Jesus. The big countdown, like a rocket about to take off. So it's obvious that they didn't use this calendar. Right? So the calendar that we calling this calendar, they're associated with Pope Gregory, right? Pope Gregory for changing the year. But check it out. This calendar has only been in existence for about 500 years. Less than that. What was in existence before then? How did people count time? How do you make a calendar? Astronomy. If you make a calendar by astronomy, who founded concepts of calendars in astronomy? When did the Greeks get astronomy? We have to look to their documents and see when they got astronomy. Did the Greeks have astronomy, let's say just 4,000 years ago? Of course not. There were no Greeks. According to history, the Greeks got an alphabet in the late first millennium, so about 1000 BC from Cadmus the Phoenician. Right? So they just had started writing letters. I don't have the book. How many people have heard of the Fibonacci sequence? Fibonacci sequence is supposed to be this crazy mathematical sequence that everything in nature is based on. How many people know who Fibonacci was? Okay. Fibonacci was the son of an Italian merchant who was taught in Algiers. All right? And he wrote a book, and the book is called Liber. I got it at home. I was going to bring it today. But it's basically about the book of counting. And what the book proves is that the Italians didn't know how to count. Like 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. They didn't know how to count. They didn't know how to weigh, they didn't know how to measure, they didn't know nothing. And so some Moorish people went into what we're calling Italy and produced it, and his father came and got educated, and he brought books back to his son, Fibonacci, to begin to learn about mathematics. And in the book, Fibonacci breaks down how he learned to count. So you just learn how to count, but you got this magical formula that's based on trigonometric calculus functions that you came up with. So now people are calling it the Fibonacci sequence. You know what I'm saying? Stolen property.
Yes.
It's stolen property. So the point is, it's not 2015. All right, that's made up. That's about an event that never happened, whatever that event was. All right, they made the calendar up later, and now what they've done is taken you off of the rhythm of nature, so you can look. Okay, what time is it? How are you gonna tell what time it is? Now the watch got enough sense to have 12 sections to it that's mirroring what the sun is doing in the universe. Right? Then they start telling you that, what's the guy's name? Who made the clock? Or refined it? Say, who? Who? What was Benjamin Banneker? An astronomer. So every time something magical got to happen, some black people got to show up. Then get it stolen from them. All right? So when we look at all of this, without going into all, I don't have to go into all the scholastic detail. Byzantine and Rome stole from Africa. They stole. They attacked the African or the Moorish indigenous populations. All right? They created edicts to take land from indigenous people in the West and the East. And now he comes to America, and he's patting grown-ass men on the head like they puppies. You seen that? You seen him doing that? They had the nerve to ask one brother, did you feel something? What you gonna feel? His aneurysm he about to have? This man couldn't even walk up the steps. You seen him walking up to the plane? Yes. He buckled twice. He needs some Pilates or something. So our people are suffering from mass ignorance. And the mass ignorance is this. And this is the last part. I ain't even going to go into this. Jesus is a crucifixion. Fiction. He's a fiction. What? Did y'all not hear that?
Double cross.
Yeah, exactly. He's a fiction. Jesus is a straw man. Jesus needed a trust. He needed a certificate of nationality. He needed his indigenous name. He needed aboriginal business. How are we going to nationalize Jesus? Listen, the church, this is the new message. Nationalize Jesus. I'm about to make the t-shirt. Who want to make the t-shirt? Jesus needs a nationality. We need to give Jesus, then we can say, okay, Jesus is the fiction. We're going to bring him into honor. And we're going to give him his indigenous name, Yehoshua or whatever it was. Right? Yehoshua El Bey. And hey, listen. From now on, we got a joke that's in honor. Every time somebody say Jesus, I want y'all to say Yeshua or Yehoshua El Bey. That's what you talking about? That's Jesus' new name.
That should be a Christmas play.
Hey, there you go. Everybody watching the YouTube land, we about to nationalize Jesus. Alright? We're going to sue the Pope for denationalization of Jesus. Alright? We're going to give him, we're going to hook him up. Give him a new name and everything. Alright, so listen. We don't have to keep going over this. Now, last part. There's a few points. Last part. Christianity, right? Like, yeah, white people fighting for Christianity now. You had the lady who was the clerk who didn't want to marry the gay people.
Oh, yeah.
Right? So now, what do you have? See, now it's not about Judeo-Christian values. Because it never was. Because that was all stolen property anyway. So this is what white people are doing right here. This is what they're doing. They're doing this real slow. They're pulling the mask all the way off. So now they're going back to their just solely and just sameness. Right? They're moving further away from when they stole the stolen property, the Judeo-Christian era, which all stolen property, all stolen Phoenician, Egyptian, and Moorish artifacts. Now they're climbing all the way back to Greco-Roman behavior, which is where you get the word democracy from. Democratus. I heard Malcolm X say democratus. Kratus means to rule, and demos comes from demon. The rule of the demons. Some people say demos means people. All right. Well, it comes from Greco-Roman. So now you see them, pedophilia, all the stuff that even Christianity and Judaism condemns. The church now, because it's an object of the state, and it needs to keep its 501c3, and it doesn't know how to contract, and it doesn't know want to nationalize Jesus. So now they're slipping all the way back into the whole Greco-Roman culture, which was their intent in the first place, which is their nature. So now your children are being taught multiculturalism under the guise of gay behavior, right? And I've heard, but I haven't seen this, I've heard they're teaching about bisexual behavior and using dildos and other things to explain it to young people.
Elementary school.
That's democracy. That's freedom. That's civil rights. But think about it. If being gay is about two people who love each other, who are the same sex, why do you have to show what type of sex they have as a form of liberating them through teaching it in public institutions? What does that have to do? You can just show a picture. Okay, these people want to be married. And they can say, well, these people are what you call LGBT, whatever. Keep the story going. Why do you have to show the sexual aspects to it? All right? You're not taking Adam and Eve and showing them getting it in. Or so, you know what I mean? You're not doing that. My point is, this is all about taking off the mask. The mask is their nature. So now we're not going to blame Christianity and Judaism. See, you can't blame religions for nothing because religions are fictitious entities. Christianity can't come up here and say, I caused all the crime on earth. That's the same as asking the Commonwealth of Pennsylvania to come up to the table and speak. No, you got an attorney that's going to speak. We have to de-spook ourselves and understand it's people causing problems, not religions. All right? Because you might have some good Christians out there that's really trying to follow what they know of as far as the Bible goes, and they being as peaceful as they can. Even though they might be a little less educated than some of y'all, they're still trying to follow what they have. But when you get all the way back to the Greco-Roman era, which is what we're creeping back into, not we, but that societal arm, all of the masks are pulled off. And the nature is exposed. So now, nature. Your nature. This is how you were taught in the past. You were taught about the science, the culture, and the nature of things. Unapologetically. Today, it's being subtly made illegal to do so. It's subtly made illegal. Because if you know the body of information that your ancestors had, and you update it in the verbiage of today, you're going to get identified as a dissident or some type of fifth column person that is speaking a weird language. Even though they can put it in journals. They can talk about melanoma and skin cancer as a scientific phenomenon, crouched in language to say such and such. But if Ali Muhammad comes and says white people are allergic to the sun, I'm a racist. But I could take a paper from the University of Arizona and it's saying the same thing in a different language. I'm just saying. What they're trying to do is make indigenous traditions illegal. That's it. That's the whole objective. Because if you can break our people from their indigenous traditions, you have broken their power completely. That's it. That's the object. That's the game. So now, Hope Fest is all about not recognizing all of the history that we went over. All right? But look, check this out. Let me throw a curveball at you real quick. I'm going to tell you where you add in time and space. Quit trying to save everybody. See, now you've fallen victim to not understanding your just solely and your just sanguinis. Right? Here's the key. Religion was created as a system that people could join traditions that they were not born or married into. I'm going to say it again real slow so you can catch it. The hallmark of religion is you get to join something that you are not a part of by bloodline and birthright. So we kept all these names, this pharaoh and this was the son of so-and-so, and the son of so-and-so was the daughter of so-and-so, and Ibn so-and-so. That's lineage. The only way you can become a part of that is if you marry into it, if that's allowed by their culture. So now, when we look at what these folk have done, they have created a culture of just destroying that just solely and just sanguinis, right? Which is the bedrock of nationality, which is the bedrock of culture, which is the bedrock of how information is passed down. Not in books and papers, but in genes. So now they want to tamper with the real holy book. But they got you focused on these holy books. They arguing about whether which book is tampered with. I'm talking about who you marry. So, our objective, see, we have to come out of that weak form of social improvement. Let's call it that. Or so our own social engineering. And get into a higher form of you know what the highest form of social engineering is? To pass on your legacy as an inheritance to children of the same gene pool. That's how you recruit. I'm going to say it again so you can get it. Okay, somebody send me. If we spend, let's say 70% of our time trying to solicit people to become a part of what we've become a part of, instead of spending the reverse, 70% of our time orchestrating, building the family networks, which means getting married and having children that becoming the inheritance of whatever we make, we're still following denationalization. It doesn't mean that we don't have a mechanism for our people to come into, because we always should leave that. But our primary focus should be in this other area, because that's going to guarantee that you're able to actually build something. And then when people see it, that's what they're attracted to. They're not attracted to proselytizing anymore because they've been proselytized to by the people who they are already afraid of that they're still following. So they don't want to, proselytizing is not a part of that. So check it out. Original men, indigenous men, white men have made you afraid of what I just said. Made you afraid of. They took your testosterone away from you, which is that zinc molecule, which is the molecule that gives you. I gotta say it like this, because this is what's going to knife into it. It gives you patriarchy, which has become what? A taboo word. And this is what indigenous people are saying now. We weren't patriarchs, we were matriarchs. Matriarchy. We were patriarchies and matriarchies because we had men and women. How can a man be a part of a matriarchy? That means he has either excess estrogen or progesterone.
Okay.
The progesterone is for the woman naturally. Neither one of us need too much estrogen because that's a problem for both of us. Why do I have to be a part of a matriarchy? I can work to protect, refine, and support the matriarchy as a patriarch. So now the language in indigenous communities is still confused because now it's, oh, that's patriarchy. No, it's not. No, it's not. No, it's not. That ain't patriarchy. That's a parasite. So now what they're trying to do is get you to destroy the yin and the yang of the situation.
Yes.
The masculine and feminine of the situation through slick talk. Pay attention to what's happening to you now. So now your power is in maintaining that order, and they're trying to flush you into one side. Why? Why are they trying to do that? No, I'm about to say something that's really going to make some people mad. This is my position on this from acute study. Non-indigenous men, let's use that term, or pale men, recognize the order of society because they learned it from us. Right? You have the right hemisphere of the brain, and you have the left hemisphere of the brain. The left hemisphere of the brain and the cranial nerves control the right side of the body. And the right side of the brain controls the left side of the body. Most people in the society are right-handed and left brain, which is masculine. The right side of the brain and the left side are the creative capacity, right? You got logic and reason, and you got creativity. Have you ever really studied creative people and how they act? They're not very aggressive, right? Very nourishing, right? That's the feminine principle of creation. The reason why you have a man is to do what the woman can't do, and the reason why you have a woman is to do what the man can't do. If you make any one of them merge each other's roles, you lose the ability to do the thing that you can do infinitely. So, European males, in their attempt to co-opt us, understood one principle. If I get his creativity, I got him. All right? But I'm going to get his creativity through logic and reason. Now follow me on this. Logic and reason. All right? What is logic? It's a set of facts that establish what is actual or reality for people, right? So I could say, it is a fact that we live in a solar system with one sun, one star. Right. That's a fact. And everybody would say, I agree. But that's not a fact. It's not. Now, in order to know that, you would have to have this book. You have to go to the telescopes and be able to prove it. But the reason why you can't prove it is because you can't what?
See it.
So now, logic is confined to what you can see. Creativity and the balance of it can deal with what you're calling unseen, but it's not unreal. You can't see the atoms in your body, but they exist. You can't see the quarks and the leptons, but they're programmed in the tissues because they have the ability as smaller entities to program tissues that are larger because they consist or make those tissues up. All right. So, the point is, the smaller things make up the larger. The larger is actually controlled by the smaller, but what happens is when we lose knowledge of the smaller, or let's call it the unseen, we start thinking the seen is the dominant force. All right? And what that does is that breaks us away from nature itself. It starts a whole psychology. Kings rule over servants. Right? Landlords rule over tenants. Creditors rule over debtors. Wait a minute. If there was no debt, there wouldn't be a creditor. If there was no society, there wouldn't be a king. If there was no tenant, who you gonna rent the property to? The balance of power is always equal. It's the perception that's put on people that creates this psychology. So my point is, just to get down to it, Europeans have played the yin and yang bounce with us through their societal conflicts. And their societal conflict is, as a parasite, you're actually neither. There is no such thing as really a white man or a white woman. If there were white men and white women based on the concepts of universal principles alone, they could sustain themselves perpetually and infinitely. Because yin and yang is only a cycle of balance of what you call in the martial arts wuxi. All right, which is the fullness that gives rise to the yin and the yang. The man and the woman. A man and a woman can come together perpetually if they're original and produce their offspring perpetually. So now, the indigenous people become a microcosm, or they become a personification of the power of the Creator. That's what I want to say. They become a personification of the infinite power of the Creator, because you can't find their beginning and you can't find their ending. You can't make an ending from it. But a parasite needs a host to leave its systematic operations to gain an existence temporarily, or to ultimately kill the thing that it's hosting off of and die itself, because it has nothing to leech off of. So what is a parasite? A parasite is only a symbol or a projection of the breach between the thing that's infinite, or a breach within it. All right? So whenever we've had this concept of super patriarchy or super matriarchy, it puts us in these scenarios and situations, and white folks have figured this out about us. So they play to that tune. All right? You have stories in mythology. I'm not going to say that, but this is the story about the Amazon. Somebody blowing. It's coming all the way through.
I thought that was coffee.
You said you thought it was coffee? No coffee. Somebody trying to get high in this.
Be nice and dress him up.
It just threw me off my topic, bro. That's one of those brain nerds when I used to hit it like, oh, wait a minute, I remember that. We shut that down. All right, so my point is, we get it. It's a simple principle. Masculine and feminine. So, in our society, that should be a focus, right? But look at what happens when black people come together, right? Or indigenous people, or aboriginal, or Moors come together. We come together, let's say we come together, let's say it's in honor. Right? Think about you if you nationalize or denationalize, it doesn't matter. How do you meet the other person? How? Where do you meet them at? Where would you go to meet a mate? How would you meet a mate and where would you go?
Church.
All right? Okay, church. That's one place. All right. When or what process do you go through of refinement to choose whether that mate is an efficient mate? What are you using? What system are you using? For instance, if you go get a job, the goal is you want them to hire you. So in a relationship, you want the other person to hire you, basically. You're like, oh, come on, accept me. But for the job, you give a resume. You give a whole portfolio on your history. In a relationship, you like, you sitting to the side when you're talking to them, leaning. Like somebody asks you some questions about your history, all kind of demons start coming out. You don't want to talk about it. Because somebody has made you ashamed of not what you are, but what happened to you. So now we enter relationships. I've been in counseling with people, I ask them, this is the first question I ask people. For the two people that are getting married, or whatever word that you're using, mates or marriage, did y'all ever sit down and come up with a common value system for the meaning of the word marriage? So what does marriage mean to you? Oh, it means this. What does marriage mean to you? It means this. Why y'all got two definitions that are different and y'all been together for 15 years? That means the politics of the marriage have different, somebody got foreign policy going on. So you see how, see what colonization does is it breaches the intimate connection between us. It breaches it. So now we don't want to even sit and have a real, there's people might be in here, you might have never asked your mate, define that for me. What's your meaning of being married? So it makes us go through the motions. And so the intimacy is not built. So now, when the intimacy is not built, there's verbal abuse. It's easy to physically abuse someone because y'all don't understand each other. Nobody sat y'all down and looked at some type of charting system, indigenous charting system, or some other system to see, oh, this is where we're compatible. This is where we might have a challenge. This is how his energy is. This is how her energy is. So we start having what? False expectations of the other person. Why are you doing this? They're doing that because that's their nature. Why you don't like to go out? You like to stay in. I like to go out. Oh yeah, you like to go out, you like to stay in. You're an air sign, they're earth sign. Earth signs are what? They like relaxed and solitary environments. Air signs like energetic and social environments. So, my point is, we have to get into indigenous traditions. But we have to get past the Pope first. We gotta get past this bullshit first. Indigenous traditions force you to be yourself. It's a window to being yourself. So if we implement that into just singleness, and our focus is on our mates, our children, and building that construct, everything that comes from that will be productive because the people will see it, and then we can get people to come in. So I'm done. Because we got to get ready for the next scrimmage. Let's do this. Let's not have a quick Q&A.
Good.
Or announcements? All right, listen. Let's do this. We got to be quick. Okay. All right, we got room for questions. All right, quick. Let's do 5. 5 questions. No. All right, 5 people can ask questions. You want to go first?
We're going to start? Okay, cool. Well, statement, and then I want you to back up how to actually get around it. Growing up in the church, the first thing they teach you is that, you know, in the end times, there's going to be rumors of war, and, you know, it's going to be all this different stuff to pull you away from the truth of who Jesus really is. So what you'll find is that when you have this conversation with most Christians, they're unwilling to have the conversation because it's already been ingrained to them from the time they grew up in church all the way through till now that this information is going to be challenged. And because it's going to be challenged, you have to be careful because the devil seeks to kill, destroy, and all this different stuff. And so how do you even deal with that? Like, I'll use for instance me and my brother, oil and water. I can't mention anything anti-Jesus about him. And the moment I mention it, he'll say, "Oh, that's because you're going to hell. I'm concerned with your soul." And I'm like, let's be concerned about the economics for our future generations. And you're concerned with your Jesus. And I'm like, listen, it says seek out your own soul salvation. Let's do that, but let's work together economically. But we can't even work together economically because of his Jesus. So how do we even begin to approach it, especially even in our family, but within the family dynamic, literally, some church, some families that one person is Muslim, one person Christian, and another person may be Buddhist.
Right.
And they fight in amongst one another and can't even come together for a common goal because of what has occurred to us via that.
Right. Well, the first thing is every situation is a particular type of situation analysis, so I could never answer that question thoroughly because you're dealing with different types of people, different families, or whatever. The only justice I could do is if there's an opening, the truth can be inserted. There has to be an opening. People don't like dogma, or they don't like being propelled into something or force or compulsion. So there has to be a window that's open, and your job is, if the window opens, then I insert the truth, because I have it. That's the simpleness of it. You can't convince them that he's not going to heaven or hell. You can't really create an argument with him because he's fixed, and then he's ingrained with certain psychological dispositions, which is, certain terms in their head. Faith. We walk blindly, not by what's up? Right.
Faith, but not by sight.
Yeah, faith, but not by sight. Stuff like that. Just psychological things that are ingrained into the brain now. You don't have an opening.
So in other words, you don't have to have truth. You just trust God.
Okay. Yeah, you just trust God, and that's fine. And my point is, if that's working for you, then that's cool. Keep working. Now, when you come to me for a family consultation, your health is bad. All the other, see, there are problematic things that are going to happen. And our job is to be there when those things happen.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Because you eating the church diet, you're bound to get some kind of diabetes, cancer, or whatever. Now you're not going to go to Jesus. You're going to come to somebody that knows, or you're going to go to the doctors. I've seen people who believe in Jesus and they get in pain, and you find out they don't believe in Jesus.
Correct.
Because they realize that it's fake.
Yeah.
Because they've been calling on Jesus and the cancer ain't going nowhere. They went to the doctors didn't save them. Now they're about to die. And you know the first thing I always say to them when they really in faith? My first thing to them is, do you really believe what you say you believe? Yeah, I believe it. Why are you scared to die? Why you scared to die? You shouldn't be scared to die. You like chicken? Eat some more. If chicken is unhealthy, wait a minute now. If chicken is unhealthy and is not good for you, then Jesus or God should have revealed that to you. I'm not saying that they didn't. I'm just saying they should have. You got all this faith in something. So just make it simple for people. If you trust in your God, it should work. If it's not working, something is wrong either with how you see your God, and something wrong with I don't know, maybe. I'm not going to insult you. Maybe. Just maybe. So you got to let people get to that moment, that critical moment, where the pain of their own ignorance forces them to seek the truth. Because we all had that moment, right?
Yes.
Everybody had that moment where they was believing something crazy and then they saw it. So.
Can you talk about the eclipse or bloody moon thing tonight? 9 o'clock.
Yeah, there's been a lot of discussion about this particular moon, the coming of the Pope, a possible asteroid. First of all, moon. All right, so the moon, let's think about it real basic. High tide is caused by what? Lunar fluctuations, right? So you have apogee and perigee. When the moon is at one of those where it's closer, it can create higher tide. So the moon has some type of gravitational effect upon the planet, right? Magnetic effect upon the planet. So when you think about full moons, astro students usually talk about endings, things coming to a close, closing out chapters. So you got a full moon and a Mercury in retrograde if you start going into that kind of science. And retro means remembering. Mercury represents the mind. Mercury, Hermes, Jehuti. It's the thinking in the mind. So you're going back and you're dealing with unfinished business and closing it out if you're smart, or things could be closing out around you. So even the energy of the end of something is being amplified by the celestial alignment. All right? So that's happening. I can't speak to it. The world is never going to end. I don't think that there's an asteroid going to hit us. All right? The Pope had nothing to do with the full moon in the truest sense of the word. You know what I mean? He's just a Pope. And if we're going to study those things, we should study them in our own life cyclically and record what goes on so that we can see the cycles of nature. There's a lot of hysteria around it, but I often like to stay away from it, even my own opinions, because when you start injecting that, it's too personal. But if you want to study astrosciences, there are people in our community that are excellent at teaching those things. We have things, of that nature, and we do discuss that. But I don't want to go too far into it. There is some significance, I think, to the world events that are happening, and other things that are in the backdrop of the Pope, like the World Bank that just met Friday. All right, they had a special session on the world's crippling economy. So while the Pope was waving his hand, the people who talk about the money was in secret, having their discussions about the SDR, the standard reserve currency, and the dollar, and problems internationally with that unit, which they've been discussing for a lot, but they had a special meeting on that. I didn't get to see the numbers, the video, because there's no video posted, but they had it posted on the World Bank website that this meeting was happening. So it's always some things going on that kind of distract you away from the other things that's going on. So you need to pay attention to those things. But that's all I can say on that. I can't add any more. Y'all can add some more on. Any questions? Let's get, because we're on to hurry up and get to the next group.
I heard something about a farm y'all got some vegetables, some good genetics.
Well,
I wonder how to get some of that food or some
we're not running it right now, but in March, we'll open it up. It's going to be in the Wissahickon area. So we'll start our planting season in March, but we don't have any produce to offer at this point right now.
I'll see you before then.
But we will be dealing with seed. We have seed banks.
Yeah.
So different types of fruit that you don't have, like tiger melons and different types of Mexican cucumbers and stuff like that. We have those. So subsequently in classes, when we get closer to the spring epic, the vernal equinox, spring equinox, we'll be, distributing those things for people who plant locally, and we'll be opening our farm project in 2016 of March.
Just real quick in regards to that, for anyone that is interested in the farm project, please let us know. The reason why is because we also have a property over in West Philadelphia that is available to us to garden as well. The other aspect is, if you know anything about farming, you realize that what they say, prior proper preparation prevents poor performance. So the land mass normally is prepared the season before. So going into November, December, before it gets cold, we really should begin to, turn the ground and to fertilize the ground with the proper things to make sure that once the snow and everything is there and penetrates, when the spring comes back in, the soil is ready and ripe for the proper planting. So,
Absolutely. Any other questions? Any other questions before we go to the next? Comments? We good? All right, well, brothers and sisters, thank you for coming out.
next Sunday?
Yes, we will be here next Sunday. Give yourselves a round of applause. Give Black and Nobel a round of applause for allowing us. Thank the brothers and sisters for being patient with us, for going a little over time. And please get back to your destination safely. Love you, peace.
Very
Love
love
you too. Right.
I don't know if you can use that.
Never. Right. Right. Ooh. Oh my God. The genius. Okay, okay. Oh, no, I'm gonna keep it. I can keep the information on it. Yeah, I'll be there tomorrow. Last week I had to do some stuff with my children, and then I had an issue with these Amtrak folk with my herbs. You know, having hemp oil. So last few weeks I've been out. Yeah. Matter of fact, I'm about to go home now and get myself ready.
Okay, so that's
So I can leave early. I'm supposed to do an interview and then.
Right, peace, brother.
Peace. How are you, sir?
Good to see you. All right.
There were some people I forgot to email some stuff last week.
Yes, you did.
And I was looking at my notes. Yeah, it's on my notes. Yeah, I was looking at my notes this morning like,
Yes.
Yaya, Sister Zakia, and both of my elders, they're going to put me in timeout. I had a really active week with health clients. For some reason, a lot of people going berserk.
That moon.
Yeah, exactly. And I was telling them to get some walks in the morning to increase your oxygen levels. During this time period, that's a good thing to do. But yeah, I had a few challenges. Is he coming to the DC? Is he coming down there to the march? Oh, he coming this time.
He said, I want to catch you down there.
Oh Lord, huh? Yeah, you know what? I'm gonna go, and I'm going because I promised some folk I would come down, so I'll be here.
That's why I came.
Oh, you did? Okay, indeed. What's your name, bro? Yeah, I'm gonna be down, bro. I'm gonna be down. Because I can't take it on my phone too.
Without water.
So, hot popcorn,